I am a 14-year-old female struggling with a home issue and need help. My mom, 35, has recently been asking me to babysit her kids, 7-year-old male, 10-year-old male, and 6-year-old female, more often ever since summer hit. She and her husband, 40, work during the day and needed me. I had no problem babysitting. I live with my grandparents, but my mom has full custody of me. I have my mom pick me up when she needs me out at her house to babysit. Keep in mind, I do babysit for free on 4 out of the 7 days of the week, sometimes more than that depending on how busy they are. It's been months, and I have been slowly getting more tired and not wanting to babysit anymore. It's become draining with the kids never listening to me and always picking a fight. I do admit I have an attitude when I get frustrated and stressed out, but that's normal for girls my age. My parents have been bad with not taking me back home to my grandparents, keeping me there for literal days watching the kids, with no spare clothes or any of my soaps for a shower. I am really picky when it comes to that kind of stuff, so I don't use theirs unless I feel like I need to. At first, when they would make me spend the night, they would say, "We are going to be home too late to drop you off," or make other excuses. I thought nothing of it and just spent the night. Now they don't tell me anything until I start asking to go home, which they always reply with, "when I feel like it," or "in a minute." It always ends up with them not taking me home at all. This is where my attitude kicks in. I start telling them that they need to take me home. They don't like it when I tell them instead of asking, but at this point, I don't care. When I ask, they rarely bring me home. It pisses me off a lot. I have been in multiple arguments with my parents, telling them that they need to start bringing me home, or I will no longer babysit. Every once in a while, after like 2 days of continuous babysitting of 3 kids, my parents will hand me a $1.20 bill. I am thankful for that, but they only started to do it because I have made threats of quitting. Like I said, this is very draining mentally. Tonight, I got in another fight with my parents about the whole situation. I was mad at her for saying that she was going to take me home, but then 2 hours later of asking, she still hasn't taken me home. I was already not in a good mood due to something that happened this morning, so I was already upset. After 2 hours of waiting for her, I went in the room to ask her when we were leaving. Once again, she told me in a minute, and I had enough. I said to her that she had to take me home and that I'm not spending the night anymore and that I was no longer going to babysit for her. Both my parents got mad at me for saying that. They then said that they were not going to bring me home now because they did not like that I was telling them what to do. They then went on to say that living with my grandparents was a privilege, and I need to appreciate it. She then said that she can make me live out with her. My mom has a male 3-bedroom, house occupying her husband, 3 kids, and a roommate, plus 2 dogs. Her house is packed with all 3 kids crammed in a small bedroom. This argument was over text, and I still haven't responded to her last message. I have no idea what to do as they won't take me home, and I can't walk to my grandparents. Please, if you have any thoughts or suggestions. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. It's disgusting to me when people use their kids as babysitters. Stop having kids you can't take care of. I would start telling my grandparents I don't want to go over anymore and join summer school clubs and use the "I have homework" excuse. Involve your teachers more in case you need adults to talk to if your grandparents allow your parents to keep treating you this way. They're getting too comfortable using you as a babysitter. No one forced them to have not 1 but 3 kids. Obviously, that comes with responsibilities. They chose to have them when they willingly had you guys. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Once home, try not to go back. Tell them you're not watching their kids anymore. Remind them you are a child, that you are their child, and that they've already neglected you enough. You're done with this abuse. I'd record or send a text stating that you do not agree to ever watch them again, and if they leave them alone with you, you will call the cops. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post. So, after that argument with my parents, things got even worse. The next morning, I woke up to find my mom and her husband already gone to work, leaving me with the kids again. I was still fuming from the night before, but I had no choice but to take care of them. The kids were their usual selves, fighting and not listening, which only added to my frustration. I texted my mom, demanding to be taken home that evening, but she just replied with a short, "We'll see." By the end of the day, I was exhausted and on the verge of tears. When my mom finally got home, I confronted her again. but she brushed me off, saying she was too tired to drive me back to my grandparents. I felt trapped and helpless. I knew I couldn't keep doing this, but I didn't know how to make her understand. The next day, I decided to take a risk. I called my grandparents and told them everything that had been happening. They were shocked and angry, and my grandpa said he would come to pick me up that evening. I felt a glimmer of hope, thinking that maybe this would finally make my mom realize how serious I was about not wanting to babysit anymore. When my grandpa arrived, my mom was furious. She accused me of being ungrateful and disrespectful, and we had another huge argument. My grandpa tried to calm things down, but my mom wouldn't listen. She said if I left with him, I shouldn't bother coming back. I was torn, but I couldn't take it anymore. I left with my grandpa, hoping that some time apart would make my mom see reason. For the next couple of days, I stayed with my grandparents. They were supportive and understanding, but I could tell they were worried about the situation. My mom didn't contact me at all, and I started to feel guilty. I knew I needed to talk to her, but I was scared of what she might say. On the third day, my mom finally called. She was still angry, but she said she wanted to talk. I agreed to meet her at a nearby park, hoping we could have a calm conversation. When I got there, she was already waiting, looking tense. We sat down, and I tried to explain how I felt, but she kept interrupting, saying I was being selfish and ungrateful. I told her I couldn't keep babysitting for free and that I needed more time for myself. She accused me of not caring about the family and said I was just trying to make her life harder. I felt like I was hitting a wall, and I didn't know how to make her understand. I told her I loved her and the kids, but I needed a break. She just shook her head and said I was making a big mistake. As we were talking, my mom's husband showed up. He was even angrier than she was, and he started yelling at me, saying I was causing unnecessary drama. I felt overwhelmed and scared, and I didn't know what to do. My mom just stood there not saying anything, and I realized she wasn't going to back me up. Feeling defeated, I told them I needed to go home. My mom's husband grabbed my arm and said I wasn't going anywhere until we sorted this out. I was terrified, but I managed to pull away and ran to a nearby store, where I called my grandpa to come get me. When he arrived, he was furious and told my mom and her husband to stay away from me. Back at my grandparents' house, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I knew things would never be the same with my mom, and I didn't know how to fix it. My grandparents were supportive, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They told me I could stay with them as long as I needed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost something important. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on school and spending time with my friends, but the situation with my mom was always in the back of my mind. I missed my siblings, and I felt guilty for leaving them behind. I knew they needed me, but I couldn't go back to the way things were. One evening, my grandpa sat me down and told me about my mom's past. He said she had always struggled with responsibility and that she had a hard time balancing work and family. He told me about how she had to grow up fast and take care of her siblings when their parents were working. I started to understand why she was so desperate for my help, but it didn't make the situation any easier. I realized that my mom's behavior was driven by her own fears and insecurities. She was trying to do her best, but she didn't know how to ask for help in a healthy way. I felt a mix of empathy and frustration, knowing that I couldn't change her, but I also couldn't keep sacrificing my own well-being. As the days went by, I tried to find a balance. I stayed with my grandparents and focused on my own needs, but I also made an effort to stay in touch with my siblings. I called them regularly and tried to be there for them as much as I could. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could do. In the end, I knew that the situation with my mom would never be easy. We had a lot of issues to work through, and it would take time and effort from both of us. But for now, I needed to take care of myself and find a way to move forward. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for crying after my husband told me to spit it out during intimacy? This is genuinely one of the most hurtful things that has happened to me throughout my marriage. I, 24-year-old female, have been married to my husband, 32-year-old male, for 3 years. Besides this, we've never had a big argument at all, and I love him so much. However, 2 weekends ago, he made me cry for the first time ever. Basically, when I was younger, I had a pretty bad speech impediment that my mom and dad put me in speech therapy for. I stuttered really bad and also pronounced my R's like W's chronically. Honestly, my parents caught it pretty late because they thought it was cute, so sometimes it still slips out. It happens a lot if I'm nervous or excited or if I'm telling a long story, but otherwise I talk fine. Well, and this is intimacy content, so please don't read further if you're uncomfortable with that. 2 weekends ago, it was my husband's birthday. We did some things for him, and I decided to dress up really nice for him, lingerie and everything. While we were having intimacy, I tried to say there, but it came out where, and my husband was like, what? Because he thought I was asking him something. I was embarrassed because obviously that's an inopportune time, so as I tried to say, never mind, nothing, I stuttered pretty bad and couldn't get my words out. I watched my husband roll his eyes and pull away from me, staring at me to finish my words. That made me feel worse, and he audibly said to me, "Fucking God, spit it out." I just tried to stop talking after that, and my husband was like, "What are you saying? No?" Because he could only hear the ends. I said no. I was trying to say never mind because my words came out wrong. He was like, "Okay, then lay back and just stop trying to talk." And I don't know why, but that made me cry. I was just so hurt that he literally didn't want me to speak because it was annoying to him. My husband seemed concerned for a second, but when he realized I was crying because of him, he was more annoyed than concerned. He just threw a shirt to me and laid down to sleep. He's been reluctant to apologize to me, but he did when I begged for one. He told me that he was just annoyed because he was excited because I got ready for him, and he thought I was saying no. He told me it isn't my speech that bothered him, but rather my actions. I don't know. It didn't make me feel better. So, the last 2 times he's tried to have intimacy with me again, I've told him no. I told him I want him to apologize clearly for making me cry, during intimacy no less. He told me that withholding intimacy is a really good way to make us hate each other for something that I perceived as worse than what it was. Is that true? Am I the jerk for this? I just feel like shoot, and I have no idea what to do. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, lifelong stutterer here. Early speech therapy really helped, so I probably only really struggle a few times a week. If I stutter in front of my wife, she is empathetic and caring. No judgment, no rush, no matter when it happens. That is the only proper response from a human being, spouse or not. Comment 2. In this scenario, he got mad at you for saying or wanting to say no. I know this isn't what happened, but how is him getting mad, treating you poorly and making you cry okay? All because you may have been telling him no? Not the idiot. Keep not having intercourse with him all the way to a therapist. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, after that incident, things have been pretty tense between us. I tried to keep my distance for a bit, but it's hard when you live together. On Monday, I decided to talk to him about how I was feeling. I told him that his reaction really hurt me and that I needed him to understand why. He seemed to listen, but I could tell he was still annoyed. He said he was sorry again, but it felt like he was just saying it to get me to stop talking about it. Later that day, I went to visit my friend who lives nearby. She's known about my speech issues since we were kids, and I felt like I needed someone to talk to who would understand. As I was explaining what happened, I started crying again. She hugged me and told me that my feelings were valid and that I shouldn't let anyone make me feel bad about something I can't control. It was comforting to hear, but it also made me realize how much this was affecting me. When I got home, my husband was in the living room watching TV. I sat down next to him and tried to start a conversation. I told him about my visit with my friend and how she helped me see that my feelings were valid. He looked at me and said, "I get that you're upset, but I don't know what else you want me to do. I've apologized." That's when I realized that he didn't really understand how deeply this had hurt me. The next day, I decided to take a different approach. I wrote him a letter explaining everything I was feeling. I told him about my struggles with my speech growing up, how hard I worked to overcome it, and how his reaction made me feel like all that progress didn't matter. I left the letter on his pillow before I went to work. When I got home that evening, he was waiting for me. He had read the letter and he looked genuinely upset. He apologized again, but this time it felt different. He said he didn't realize how much his words had hurt me and that he was sorry for being so insensitive. He promised to be more understanding in the future. We talked for a long time that night. He opened up about some of his own insecurities and how he sometimes feels like he's not good enough for me. It was the first time he had ever shared something like that with me, and it made me see him in a different light. I realized that we both had our own issues to work through and that we needed to support each other. The next day, we decided to spend some time together doing something we both enjoy. We went for a hike in the nearby woods and talked about everything except what had happened. It was nice to just be together without any tension. On the way back, he took my hand and told me that he loved me and that he was going to do better. It felt like a step in the right direction. However, things took an unexpected turn that evening. We were having dinner when my husband's phone rang. It was his sister, and she sounded upset. She had just found out that her husband had been cheating on her. My husband immediately offered to go over and support her, and I agreed that he should. He left right after dinner, and I spent the rest of the evening alone, thinking about everything that had happened. The next day, my husband was still at his sister's place. I decided to use the time to reflect on our relationship. I realized that while his reaction had hurt me deeply, it was also a wake-up call for both of us. We needed to communicate better and be more understanding of each other's feelings. When he came home that evening, he looked exhausted. He told me about everything that had happened with his sister and how he had tried to comfort her. I could see that he was emotionally drained, and I felt a pang of guilt for adding to his stress, but I also knew that we needed to talk about our own issues. We sat down and had another long conversation. This time, it felt more productive. We both acknowledged our faults and promised to work on them. He admitted that he had been too focused on his own excitement that night and hadn't considered my feelings. I told him that I needed him to be more patient with me, especially when it comes to my speech. We also talked about our future and what we wanted from our relationship. We agreed that we needed to make more time for each other and to be more open about our feelings. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt like we were finally making progress. In the days that followed, things started to improve. We made an effort to spend more quality time together and to communicate better. My husband was more patient with me, and I felt more comfortable opening up to him. It wasn't easy, but we were both committed to making it work. One evening, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie when he turned to me and said, "I'm really sorry for how I reacted that night. I know it hurt you, and I promise to do better." It was a simple statement, but it meant a lot to me. I could see that he was genuinely trying to change, and it gave me hope for our future. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to jump over a broom at my wedding and causing family drama? I am 33 years old, Black female, soon to be married to a 29-year-old white male. We're getting married in October. We've been together for 3 years, engaged for 1. I was born and raised in Kenya, and I moved to the United States to attend university. My fiancé is from the West Coast, Wyoming, and his parents still live there. My fiancé and his parents don't have the best relationship. I've only met them a few times since we've been together. His mother always asks to come visit, but my fiancé finds excuses to stop her from coming. He's very introverted, and his mother and father have very different personalities, so I understand why he keeps his distance. After hearing about our engagement, my fiancé's mother insisted on helping with the decorations for the wedding. She's an interior decorator. I told her that she could design the centerpieces, but everything else would be handled by the wedding planner. She begrudgingly agreed, and I thought that was the end of it. She flew in a few weeks after that to discuss wedding plans. She showed me a few of her centerpiece designs and then showed me the real reason why she came: the brooms. At first, I didn't understand why she was showing me a bunch of elaborate brooms. She had a whole file showcasing about 50 types of brooms. I kept thinking that the venue we had chosen didn't need different fancy brooms everywhere, because it's a modern venue. The brooms really wouldn't fit into the theme that we were going for. I guess she saw the confusion on my face because she asked if I already had a broom in mind, because she was really hoping we could pick one out together. I told her that the cleaning staff at the venue would do an excellent job beforehand, so bringing a broom would not be necessary. She laughed and said, "I'm talking about picking out a broom to jump over during the ceremony." I'm not normally this dense. I know the history of jumping the broom in African American history, but I'm from Kenya. We don't jump the broom in Kenya, and I would feel uncomfortable jumping the broom because it's not a part of my culture and my fiancé is very white. I just didn't think that my white mother-in-law would be so insistent on us jumping the broom. She was downright beaming when she showed me more broom photos. I told her that I was uncomfortable with jumping the broom and gave her my reasons. My fiancé stepped in and said that he was uncomfortable as well. His mother was pissed. She said the whole reason she came here was to pick out brooms, and now our wedding won't have any culture. I told her that we could incorporate some of my tribe's traditions if she wanted to add some culture into my wedding. I mentioned the Kenyan choir that was going to be singing at our wedding, not to mention the very traditional food that would be served. But she wouldn't budge on that broom, and how without it, we were turning our backs on my culture. I finally snapped and told her that we could always go the dowry route. Her side of the family could scrounge together a few goats and some cows, and we'd call it even. She turned red and stomped off. She left after a day of the silent treatment. I thought she would cool down a bit and we could be cordial. My fiancé told me that would never happen. He was right. Now for an update. A few weeks ago, my fiancé's mother made a post on Facebook. She decided to make her own custom broom herself and made a post on Facebook, condemning me and my refusal to jump the broom. She went on and on about how I was turning away from my roots, and how she slaved for weeks on a broom that will never be jumped over. I've received countless messages from her friends and family calling me a jerk. My fiancé's dad has called my fiancé and me ungrateful. My fiancé is livid and wants to boot her out of the wedding and cut contact. But now most of his side is refusing to come to the wedding to show solidarity with his mother. So am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. Just reply to the post, or share to your own page with a simple, "I've already told her we don't jump the broom in Kenya. Just because I'm African, she thinks we all traditionally jump the broom. Please kindly refrain from messaging me hurtful messages because I will screenshot and post them. Don't shame me over something neither you nor I know anything about. There's no need to try guilt trip me and my fiancé because I feel no guilt over a tradition that is not mine." Comment 2. Okay, she complained she slaved over making the broom. She is embarrassing herself. She doesn't understand the difference between African American and African. You can make a response that jumping the broom is an American tradition rooted in our nation's history. It is very sad how she thought she was being so progressive that she knew about jumping the broom to now lecturing you about being a POC. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, a lot has happened since my last update. After the Facebook post, things got even more complicated. My fiancé and I decided to take a few days to cool off and think about how to handle the situation. We were both stressed and didn't want to make any rash decisions. During this time, my fiancé's sister reached out to us. She was sympathetic and said she understood why we didn't want to jump the broom. She offered to mediate a conversation between us and their mother. We were hesitant, but agreed to give it a try. The conversation didn't go as planned. My fiancé's mother was still furious and refused to listen to our reasons. She kept insisting that we were disrespecting her and the family. My fiancé tried to explain that this was our wedding and that we wanted it to reflect our cultures and values, but she wouldn't budge. The call ended with her hanging up on us. The next day, my fiancé's father called again, this time more aggressively. He accused us of tearing the family apart and said that if we didn't include the broom, they wouldn't come to the wedding. My fiancé was visibly upset and told his father that if they couldn't respect our wishes, then maybe it was better if they didn't come. This led to a huge argument, and my fiancé ended up hanging up the phone. We were both emotionally drained and didn't know what to do next. We decided to focus on the positive aspects of the wedding and try to move forward. However, the situation escalated when my fiancé's mother sent out a mass email to their extended family, detailing her version of events and painting us in a very negative light. This led to even more messages and calls from family members, most of whom we had never even met. At this point, we were seriously considering eloping to avoid all the drama. But then, something unexpected happened. My mother, who had been relatively quiet throughout this ordeal, decided to step in. She called my fiancé's mother and had a long conversation with her. I don't know all the details, but my mother later told me that she explained our perspective and tried to find a compromise. A few days later, my fiancé's mother called us. She apologized for her behavior and said she realized that she had been too pushy. She still wanted to include the broom, but she was willing to let us decide how to incorporate it. We were skeptical, but agreed to meet with her to discuss it further. When we met, she showed us the broom she had made. It was beautiful, and it was clear that she had put a lot of effort into it. She suggested that we could have the broom on display at the reception as a symbol of unity, rather than jumping over it during the ceremony. We thought this was a reasonable compromise and agreed to it. With this issue resolved, we were able to focus on the other aspects of the wedding. My fiancé's family slowly started to come around, and some of them even apologized for their earlier behavior. We were relieved that things were finally starting to calm down. However, the stress of the past few weeks had taken a toll on our relationship. My fiancé and I had been arguing more than usual, and we realized that we needed to take some time to reconnect. We decided to take a weekend trip to a nearby cabin to relax and spend some quality time together. This turned out to be exactly what we needed. We talked about our future, our goals, and how we wanted to handle conflicts moving forward. By the end of the trip, we felt more connected and ready to face whatever challenges came our way. As the wedding day approached, we were both nervous but excited. My family flew in from Kenya, and it was wonderful to have them here to support us. My fiancé's family also started to arrive, and there were some awkward moments, but overall, everyone was on their best behavior. The wedding day itself was beautiful. The Kenyan choir sang, the food was amazing, and the broom was displayed prominently at the reception. My fiancé's mother even gave a heartfelt speech, acknowledging her earlier mistakes and expressing her happiness for us. It was a touching moment, and it felt like a turning point in our relationship with her. Looking back, this whole experience taught us a lot about communication and compromise. It wasn't easy, but we managed to find a solution that worked for everyone. We're hopeful that this will be the start of a better relationship with my fiancé's family. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!